Have you ever worked so hard that your body was exhausted, yet your life barely moved forward? And have you ever met someone who seemed calm, almost ordinary, but somehow everything they touched turned into opportunity? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to explore a theme that people argue about at dinner tables, in classrooms, and inside their own heads at 3 in the morning. Is money made by hard work, or is it made by the mind? What if the real answer is not either or, but a deeper law that most people never learn until they are forced to learn it the hard way? And what if the Buddhist style of motivation is not about chasing wealth, but about mastering the causes that create it while protecting the heart from greed, fear, and shame? Let me tell you a story. Because stories are where wisdom stops being a slogan and starts becoming something you can actually live. There was a young man named Doreen who grew up in a place where people respected only one thing: effort. If you were tired, that meant you were virtuous. If you were resting, that meant you were lazy. If you were smiling, that meant you were not serious. In his neighborhood, pride was measured in how much you could suffer without complaining. Doreen learned it early to worship exhaustion. He watched adults come home with cracked hands and heavy eyes. He heard them say, "This is life. This is what it means to be responsible." And he believed them, not because they were wise, but because he loved them and wanted to be like them. He made a promise to himself: "I will work harder than everyone. I will never be weak. I will earn my way out." So he did what many people do. He made effort his religion. He woke up before sunrise. He worked 2 jobs. He carried boxes and cleaned floors. He studied at night. He drank cheap coffee and told himself he was building character. When friends invited him out, he said no. When his body asked for sleep, he said not yet. When his mind asked for peace, he told it to be quiet. For a while, he felt powerful. There is a strange kind of pride that comes from being busy all the time. This nuisance can feel like progress, even when it is not. And when you are always moving, you do not have to sit still long enough to hear your own fear. But after years, something started to break. He was working harder than anyone he knew. Yet his bank accounts stayed thin. He kept hearing about people who made money online, people who started small businesses, people who invested, people who found opportunities. Meanwhile, he felt like a donkey pulling a cart that never arrived anywhere. One day, at his second job, he met an older man named Suman. Suman was not rich in a flashy way. He wore simple clothes. He spoke softly, but there was something about him that made the room feel calmer. He had the kind of presence that made people stop talking over each other. Doreen noticed something even more confusing. Suman did not rush. He did not show off his business, yet he always seemed to finish what mattered, and he always seemed to have options. He would take breaks without guilt. He would talk to people without forcing a smile. He would say no politely and walk away like his dignity was not for sale. After a long shift, Doreen finally asked him, "How do you stay so calm? Do you not worry about money?" Suman looked at Doreen the way a teacher looks at a student who is brave enough to admit confusion. He said, "I worry sometimes, but I do not let worry drive the car. I let it sit in the back seat." Doreen laughed, thinking it was just poetic talk. But Suman continued. He said, "You are trying to create wealth the way people try to create fire by rubbing wet wood. You can rub forever. Your hands will bleed, but the wood is still wet. You need to change the conditions." Doreen felt offended. He wanted to defend himself. "I am doing everything right. I am working. I am sacrificing." But deep inside, he also felt relief. As if someone had finally said the truth he was scared to say. What conditions? Areen asked. Suman said, your mind. Areen almost rolled his eyes. He had heard this kind of advice before. Think positive. Believe in yourself. Manifest. It always sounded like something rich people said to avoid talking about unfairness. But Suman did not sound like a motivational poster. He sounded like someone describing gravity. He said, the mind creates money the way soil creates crops. Effort is important, but effort is not the seed. Effort is the water. If you water weeds, you will get weeds. If you water a seed, you will get a harvest. Areen did not fully understand, but he could feel the message pressing against his life. So he asked Suman to explain, and Suman did it in a way that did not feel like preaching. He told another story. He said, imagine two people cutting wood. One is strong and swings all day. The other is not as strong, but he sharpens his axe. At the end of the day, who has more wood? Areen answered quickly, the one with the sharp axe. Suman nodded. The sharp axe is your mind. If your mind is blunt, you will work hard and still stay poor. Not only in money, but in peace. The Buddha spoke about suffering being shaped by craving, ignorance, and wrong view. Wealth, in a clean sense, is shaped by clarity, skillful intention, and right action. Areen had never connected Buddhism with money. He thought spiritual people should be above wealth. But Suman did not speak like someone who hated money. He spoke like someone who respected it enough not to worship it. Suman said, money is not evil. Money is a tool. But the mind that holds the tool can be wise or foolish. If the mind is greedy, money becomes poison. If the mind is fearful, money becomes a chain. If the mind is clear, money becomes a bridge. That night, Areen walked home with his thoughts louder than traffic. He wanted to reject the whole idea because it would mean admitting that his suffering had not guaranteed his success. But he could not ignore what he knew in his bones. He had been working like someone trying to outrun his own insecurity. He was not just earning, he was proving. And proving never ends. Proving is a hunger that eats your life. He decided to test Suman's words, not by quitting hard work, but by upgrading the inner conditions that shaped his work. The next morning, instead of reaching for his phone, Areen sat on the edge of his bed and breathed, just breathed. At first it felt stupid. His mind screamed, "You are wasting time." But he kept breathing, and something interesting happened. He noticed how chaotic his mind was. It was like a market where everyone shouted at once. Fear shouted the loudest. Shame whispered behind it. Anger argued with both. He realized that he was not truly choosing his life. He was reacting. That realization was painful, but also freeing. Because if you are reacting, you can learn to respond. And response is where power lives. Over the next weeks, Areen began a simple practice. Each day, he would take 10 minutes to sit quietly. He would watch his breath. He would notice his thoughts without immediately believing them. He learned a skill that most schools never teach. He learned to separate reality from mental noise. Then he started applying that skill to money. He noticed that whenever he felt anxious, he would buy small things to comfort himself. Snacks, random items, anything to create a quick feeling of relief. He had always blamed low income for his lack of savings. But now he saw another cause: emotional spending. Not because he was careless, but because he was trying to treat his nervous system with cheap medicine. He noticed something else. He avoided learning about money because it made him feel ignorant. And whenever he felt ignorant, he would work more hours to avoid that feeling. It was easier to be exhausted than to be a beginner. That was a karmic pattern, not karma as punishment, but karma as cause and effect. Ignorance created avoidance. Avoidance created stagnation. Stagnation created more fear. Fear created more work. And the cycle repeated, like a wheel rolling over the same ground until it becomes a rut. Suman told him, "You do not become wealthy only by earning. You become wealthy by reducing leakage." Leakage? Aureen asked. Suman said, energy leakage, attention leakage, money leakage, integrity leakage. Every time you act from confusion, you leak something. You leak time. You leak focus. You leak trust. Wealth requires containment. Containment requires discipline. Discipline requires a mind that is not constantly hijacked. Aureen began to treat his attention like currency. He stopped scrolling late at night. He stopped complaining with coworkers for hours because he realized complaining created the illusion of connection while draining motivation. He started reading about basic finance, budgeting, simple investing concepts, but more importantly, he started watching his relationship with desire. He noticed that he wanted to look successful more than he wanted to be stable. That was another karmic trap. When you want to look successful, you spend to perform. When you want to be stable, you spend to build. Now here is where the story becomes surprising. As Aureen calmed his mind, he became better at work, not by pushing harder, but by seeing smarter. He began noticing which tasks created real value and which tasks were war. He learned to communicate clearly. He learned to ask questions instead of pretending he understood. He learned to admit mistakes quickly, which made people trust him. Trust is a form of wealth. It opens doors that effort alone cannot open. One day, his manager asked him to train a new employee. Aureen used to hate training. He thought it slowed him down, but now he saw it differently. Training was leadership practice. It was the chance to improve systems. It was the chance to make the team more efficient. He trained the employee patiently, and the employee became competent quickly. The manager noticed. Then the manager gave Aureen more responsibility. Then a raise. Not huge, but enough to signal something important. The world rewards not only hard work, but the ability to reduce friction for others. Aureen began to understand what Suman meant. The mind makes money because the mind shapes perception, and perception shapes decisions, and decisions shape outcomes. But Suman also warned him, if your mind becomes obsessed with wealth, you will lose the very clarity that created it. So Aureen learned another Buddhist lesson. The middle way, not poverty worship, not greed worship, balance. He began practicing generosity, not in a dramatic way, but in a clean way. He helped his mother with bills. He donated small amounts. He tipped service workers well when he could. He did this not because generosity magically returns money, but because generosity dissolves the tight fist of fear. A fearful mind hoards. A hoarding mind cannot see opportunities because it is always guarding what it has. A generous mind is flexible. It trusts life more. It is willing to invest, to learn, to take wise risks. Generosity is not just moral, it is psychological training. Aureen also practiced honesty with himself. He looked at the ways he had lied, small lies, like pretending he was fine when he was drowning, pretending he did not care about money when he actually felt ashamed about not having it. Those lies created inner conflict, and inner conflict reduces mental power. In Buddhist terms, right speech and right intention are not just ethical. They create inner harmony, and inner harmony creates clarity. Clarity creates skill. Over time, Areen started a side project, not because he wanted quick riches, but because he wanted to test his skills. He offered a simple service to small shops, organizing inventory and improving workflow. He charged modestly at first. He listened to clients. He learned. He improved. Then something happened that felt like destiny, but was actually karma in action. One shop owner introduced him to another, then another. His reputation grew, and unlike his old life, where he felt trapped in endless hours, now he felt he was building something that could expand without destroying him. One night, Areen visited Suman to thank him. He said, "You were right. The mind makes money." Suman smiled. He said, "Do not stop there. The mind also makes suffering. If you can use the mind to create stability, you can also use it to create freedom." Areen asked, "What do you mean by freedom?" Suman said, "Many people want money because they want to feel safe. But real safety does not come from numbers. It comes from understanding impermanence. Everything changes. Jobs change. Markets change. Bodies change. Relationships change. If you chase permanent safety in an impermanent world, you will suffer." Areen felt a chill. It was true. He had been chasing money as if it could protect him from all pain. But no amount of money can stop loss, aging, death, or change. Money can soften difficulties, yes, but it cannot replace wisdom. Suman said, "The Buddha taught that attachment creates suffering. You can earn money without attachment if your intention is clean. Use it to support your life, support your family, support your practice, support compassion. But do not build your identity on it." This is the line many people struggle to walk. They either reject money and become resentful, or they chase money and become empty. The middle path is to respect money without worshiping it. Areen began to see wealth as a flow of causes, skills, relationships, trust, health, discipline, attention, emotional regulation, integrity, patience. These are all forms of capital, and he began to see poverty not only as lack of money, but as lack of options, lack of time, lack of peace, lack of support, lack of knowledge, lack of self-trust. When you think this way, you stop blaming yourself blindly, but you also stop pretending you are powerless. You take responsibility for the causes you can change, and you accept the conditions you cannot change with courage and clarity. Now let me bring the lesson closer to you, because you might be thinking, "That is nice, but my life is different. I have responsibilities. I am stressed. I do not have time to meditate. I do not have connections. I am not lucky." I hear you, and the point is not to pretend the world is fair. The point is to understand what is in your hands. Hard work matters. It builds stamina. It builds credibility. It builds the foundation. But if hard work is driven by fear, it becomes self-punishment. If hard work is guided by clarity, it becomes craftsmanship. The mind matters because the mind determines what you notice. If you only notice obstacles, you will act like a victim. If you notice patterns, you will act like a strategist. If you notice your own impulses, you will act like a master of your energy. There is a simple way to test whether your mind is creating wealth or destroying it. Pay attention to how you feel when you think about money. If you feel constant anxiety, your mind is treating money like a life or death threat. You will likely make short-term decisions. You will chase quick fixes. You will avoid learning because learning makes you feel vulnerable. If you feel constant envy, your mind is comparing. Comparison burns energy. It also distorts reality. You will underestimate your own progress and overestimate other people's wins. If you feel constant shame, your mind is turning money into identity. Shame makes you hide. It makes you avoid asking for help. It makes you accept poor treatment because you think you deserve it. But if you feel curiosity, calm determination, and patience, your mind is in a productive state. In that state, you can learn. You can plan. You can delay gratification. You can invest in skills. You can build relationships. You can recover from mistakes. This is Buddhist motivation in its real form. Not hype, not shouting, not pretending everything is easy. It is the quiet power of training the mind so it stops wasting your life. There is also a deep karmic truth here. Money often follows value, and value often follows attention. Where your attention goes, your skill grows. Where your skill grows, your usefulness grows. Where your usefulness grows, your opportunities grow. It is not magic. It is cause and effect. But there is another layer that people forget. The way you treat people shapes your life more than the way you hustle. If you build wealth by stepping on others, you will live in fear of being stepped on. If you build wealth by deception, you will attract deception. If you build wealth with integrity, you build a kind of invisible protection because people want to work with those they trust. Integrity is not only moral, it is practical. Arin learned this when a client once offered him a shortcut. The client asked him to manipulate numbers to avoid taxes. The money offered was tempting. Old Arin would have said yes out of desperation. New Arin felt the inner alarm. He saw the karmic chain. One lie would require another. One shortcut would weaken his identity. And even if he never got caught, he would live with inner conflict. He said no. The client got angry, but later another client heard about his honesty and hired him for a bigger project. That is not a fairy tale. That is how worst works. Now, let me share a scene that might feel familiar. Imagine someone working 3 jobs, exhausted, telling themselves they are doing everything right. But their mind is full of panic, so they buy things they do not need. They do not sleep, so they make mistakes. They do not learn, so they stay stuck in low-wage work. Their effort is real, but the inner conditions keep sabotaging them. Now imagine someone with fewer hours, but a clear plan. They learn a skill steadily. They manage spending. They sleep. They maintain health. They network. They ask questions. They invest small amounts consistently. They do not look busy all the time, but their life grows. Who looks like they work harder? The first person. Who becomes stable faster? Often the second. This is what it means to say money is made by the mind. It does not mean thinking alone creates cash. It means the quality of your mind determines the quality of your actions, and your actions determine your results. And if you want to take the Buddhist angle seriously, there is one more step. Even if you master money, if you do not master craving, money will not make you happy. It will simply upgrade your worries. Some people become rich and then fear losing it. They become suspicious. They become controlling. They become lonely. They cannot enjoy what they have because their mind is always calculating threats. Other people gain stability and become kinder. They become generous. They support others. They have time to reflect. They have time to breathe. Their wealth becomes a platform for compassion. Same money, different mind, different karma. So what do you do if you want wealth without losing your soul? You train the mind the way you train the body. Small daily practice, consistency, patience. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of escaping into spending or procrastination. You learn to see thoughts as thoughts, not commands. You learn to plan with clarity instead of panicking. You learn skills that increase your value. You build relationships based on trust. You keep your actions aligned with your conscience. And you remember impermanence, not to become hopeless, but to become wise. Because when you remember, everything changes. You stop wasting time on shallow status games. You focus on what lasts longer than money. Character. If you are young and you feel pressure to become rich fast, remember this. Fast money often comes with hidden costs. The mind that wants fast money is oft undriven by insecurity. Insecurity creates blind spots. Blind spots create mistakes. Mistakes create suffering. But steady growth, guided by wisdom, creates a life you can actually live inside. If you are older and you feel regret, remember this. Karma is not a life sentence. Karma is a pattern, and patterns can change when the mind changes. You can start training attention today. You can start learning today. You can start building integrity today. Your future can be different, even if your past was messy. And if you are somewhere in the middle, tired but still hopeful, remember this. You do not need to become a perfect monk to apply Buddhist motivation. You just need to stop letting the mind run wild. You need to become the driver. I want to close this story by returning to Aurane, because his ending is not a dramatic Hollywood victory. It is something quieter and more real. A few years after meeting Suman, Aurane had savings. He had a stable income. He had a small business that did not destroy his health. But the biggest change was not his money. It was his face. He looked softer, not weak, softer, like someone no longer fighting an invisible war. He visited his old neighborhood and saw young people rushing, anxious, trying to prove themselves the way he once did. He did not judge them. He recognized them. He wanted to tell them, work hard, yes, but do not turn your life into punishment. Sharpen the axe, train the mind, let wisdom guide your effort. And he also remembered something Suman said near the beginning. Delay is not absence. If you plant good causes, results come. Sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but always according to conditions. Thank you for being here with me today. If this spoke to you, share in the comments what you believe now. Do you think money comes more from hard work, or from mindset, or from both in a certain order? And if you have your own story about learning this lesson, I would love to hear it, because your experience might become someone else's turning point. Before you go, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and stay connected. We are building a space where motivation is not empty hype, but real inner training. The kind that creates wisdom, compassion, and a life that actually feels worth living. Until next time, keep your efforts strong, keep your mind clear, and let your choices plant the kind of karma you will be proud to meet later.